Today I'm joined by Jose Paredes. Jose, how's it going?
Going all right. How are you?
Doing good. Jose is one of the people on our team who specializes specifically in Vault, which makes him perfect to present the topic today, which leads us to that actual topic. So, if you haven't been living under a rock for the last 2 months, Vault 2021 is out. We've done a couple of videos already on some of the what's news in products. So if you haven't seen those already, go ahead and check those out on our YouTube channel. But today we're going to be going over a specific functionality within Vault 2021, specifically Vault Pro 2021, which is the functionality of duplicate search. Jose will explain what that means later, but I believe this will help a ton of people who maybe have similar geometric data in their vaults, maybe some duplicates in terms of models, but maybe not part numbers or file numbers or file names, etc. We're just going to go over all of that today. I think this is really important, kind of a game changer for a lot of people, especially when they're trying to clean up the data that they have on their vault. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass it to Jose. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the questions panel, and we'll get to them at the end of this. Jose,
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. And just probably to start off here, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about duplicate search here. And like Nigel mentioned, this is functionality that came out in 2021 officially, and then was actually introduced in Vault Professional 2020.2, which is one of the latest updates. So it became available, and what makes it different, like Nigel mentioned, there is it actually looks at the geometric information of your parts and finds duplicates that way. As many of you are aware, Vault does have duplicate search, but in terms of file names. So that has been available for a while. So you can turn what's called unique file names inside of Vault, and it doesn't allow you to check in files that already exist. So in 2020.2 and 2021, we do have the introduction of geometric searching. So that's what we're going to go ahead and take a look at today. We're going to look at how it's set up, how it works in Vault, as well as how it works in Inventor and how the tools work there. So setup and criteria, let's take a look. So the way that the duplicate search is set up inside of Vault Professional is actually by us telling it what folders we want it to go through the parts and check for us. So essentially, we go into our Vault Professional client as an administrator, and we tell it a list of not a list of folders, but a top level folder that we wanted to index and search through, and then any children folders beneath that are actually included at the same time. What happens after that? These files are sent to our job processor, which again implies we're on professional there, and it combs through the files and tries to find similar or identical geometries within the files. When files are checked into to Vault through Inventor, they are sent to the job processor pretty much every 5 minutes to be indexed, and then that will actually update your report, and dashboard, which we're going to see in a bit. So, like I mentioned, the duplicate search in the past used to be by file name. Now it's actually looking for identical geometry. And it's looking at the geometry. So it's not affected by the material that you use. It's not affected by the density, color, if it's oriented in a different way, or if it's a mirrored part. If you have two files in there that are identical geometry, but they have some of these different criteria there, that they'll actually come back as identical anyway in your dashboard. You will have the choice to actually sort through these, as we'll see in a bit. And then files aren't considered duplicate if they are a different number of bodies. So if you have assemblies with, that you've shrink wrapped or made a single body, even though they're identical geometry, it's able to identify between these two different files and know that and identify them as different parts there, as well as the tolerances that you have applied to these files. if those tolerances are different, then it won't actually consider them a duplicate. So to take a look at that, we're going to go into, again, our Vault Professional client. And first thing you'll have to do is actually enable your duplicate search or duplicate parts search here. So you're going to go to Tools, Administration, and then your Vault settings. So in your Vault settings, you'll notice this new section here. If you're familiar with the admin side of things, duplicate search settings is this new section here. You're going to go ahead and configure it. And then again, you'll first have to enable it up here. So make sure that that check mark is ticked. And then you'll have to give it a folder. So again, it searches through your folder structure inside of Vault. What I ended up doing is went to the top level of my Project Explorer. And my design files are all in this designs folder. This is one of the things that, again, we recommend to our customers when setting up Vault. We want to make sure that, especially if you're working with Inventor, you want to make sure that the Inventor project has one main workspace that it can work from top down. And in this case, that's the designs folder in my Vault. So that's the folder that I selected. Basically, in every folder, and every folder below that actually gets added as well, so that that will add all these parts to be indexed. Yep. All right, so since I already had my designs folder, you'll see here that when I originally added it, it sent all my files to what's called the job queue. And again, job processor is one of those things that a lot of our customers aren't too familiar with. It's essentially a machine that gets set up with a Vault client and has this application running in the background, waiting to receive jobs from users to offload any of that work to a separate machine. Some of you may have noticed that when you check in a file and you need a preview file generated as well, DWF, it'll take a little longer during your check-in. The job processor is meant to offset this. So again, the job processor is going to take this load of indexing these files and checking their geometry so that your machine itself doesn't have to do it. So it'll send it to the job queue. When you initiate it, you can actually check in here and you'll see, depending on the amount of files that are being added, it does it in batches. So you may see a long list of jobs that it needs to go through in order to index all of your parts. So once, again, depending on the amount of files that you have and selected to be indexed, it may take a little while for it to update completely. But once all the jobs are done, you can actually check your dashboard to see basically the state of your Vault as far as duplicate geometry. So it'll tell you the amount of files that it scanned, and then it'll give you this duplicate ratio, essentially letting you know, hey, how many files have duplicate geometry compared to unique file geometry within your Vault. So as you can see on your screen, and you'll see on my dashboard, 3.8% of my files are duplicated or have duplicate geometry. We'll see how as we move forward, that actually increases / decreases when we change things. The other thing we'll see here is actually you can generate a report from this dashboard. And what's nice about this report is it groups everything. It creates groups by geometry. So if each unique geometry that is duplicated within your Vault gets pretty much broken up into a page, and on that page you have these file names in your Vault that you can go and double check to make sure that, you know, is there a specific reason that these files are kept separately and not reused, and then it's a helpful way to go through and actually replace these files if it's something that is truly duplicated. So we're gonna go into my Vault here, and you'll see I have my dashboard up in here, and I have 6 files that are duplicated with 3 unique shapes. If I want to know exactly which files these are, again, we'll generate a report. So we have a button up here that will allow me to view the duplicates report. And essentially this is what it outputs here. Again, you on the first page, you'll have your actual dashboard, but on the side, you'll see that there's 3 groups of geometries that are duplicated. So if I go to group 1, you'll see that there's 2 files here that have identical geometries, and it tells me the path. It tells me pretty much a lot of information about it, specifically how many files it's used in. This is especially helpful when trying to figure out which files are going to replace which ones. Of course, it's going to be a lot easier to replace the file that is being used in 1 assembly versus the one that's being used in 3 assemblies. We'll take a look at the different ways that this can actually happen, but you can actually do it through the Vault client or in Inventor itself. We'll take a look at that. But again, it's separated by the geometries that you see, whether it's a spur gear, you'll see here, compression fan, and then a different compression fan on the front as well. So you'll be able to keep track of this, and you can pretty much export this to an Excel sheet if you want, or as you start progressing through your duplicate files, you can actually generate a new report to see exactly what's left. So that portion of the dashboard, that portion of the Vault client is pretty much if the files have been loaded into Vault already. So we're talking, you know, when you're creating your Vault for the first time, we take off the unique file names usually and import all the files that are needed or currently in your environment, and then work backwards to clean it up, make sure that we're replacing those. You know, in the past, like Nigel was saying, this was a bit of a hassle, specifically if you have files that are duplicate but don't have the same name. It got a little difficult there, but there is a way now through Inventor where, you know, if you're importing a file from a vendor, if you're downloading a model off the internet or anything like that, you can check to see if there's a duplicate geometry already inside of your Vault, and then make sure that you don't import duplicate geometry. So what we're going to do here is actually take a look at this part here, and aptly named, it's not in the Vault yet. I downloaded this offline. It's a vendor file that they sent us, and I want to make sure that this file doesn't exist yet. So we're going to go into the Vault tab here, and you'll see this find duplicates portion in here. So and take a look. Because it's the part itself that's open already, it automatically selects it. We'll take a look at the assembly environment in a little bit, when we're going to go ahead and do a find and replace. But the part gets selected automatically in this environment. But in an assembly, though, you can choose which parts you want to search for duplicates and move forward from there. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and see if there's a duplicate part in there. Again, this part itself is not in Vault yet. So before we check it in, let's go ahead and check if this already exists. In this case, we see that there is a cartridge cover already in there. So it was able to search the geometry and let me know, hey, you already have a part that exists in this case. But so let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and check this in anyway. Check it into my Vault here. And once it's checked in, what I'm going to end up doing here is, again, we have instances where files are already in there. You already have these 2 things. So we're going to do a replace in here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start a new duplicate search in my assembly. And like I mentioned, because we're in an assembly environment, it allows me to check select the component that I want to search for. So I'm going to select this one and then do a search. So again, because I just checked it in, this not in Vault yet part shows up. And what I can do from here is actually, if I select, there's an option to replace all. So if I do this, just as easy as that, it goes through and it replaces the instances of the cartridge cover that is in Vault. So once I go ahead and save it, and check it in. So we were able to replace this assembly in here, sorry, this part in the assembly with a replacement part. In this case, we went backwards. Instead of eliminating duplicate parts, I actually added one just for the the presentation here. But if we go in here, you'll see that my duplicate ratio actually went up because I added that cartridge cover. So it was able to have that processed. Again, I have my job processor pretty much running in the background, checking very, very quickly, actually. I have it set to every 10 seconds just for demonstration purposes. But again, it would take a little longer in the production environment, usually having it check every 5 minutes. As you can see, we got an additional group because now we have an additional geometry that we're checking for, and then the amount of files actually went up as well. Duplicate ratio is just a fast way of checking that. So we saw how we can actually do the replace through Inventor on an assembly that we have open. But sometimes we have mass amounts of files that are actually being duplicated in different assemblies. So we want to go ahead and make sure that that we can change it in multiple assemblies at the same time. So what we end up doing is actually going into the Project Explorer here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my model. And then we will see this not in Vault yet part. So this is, again, the part that I just imported, the one that was being used. If I go to where used, we can actually see that it's being used in this cartridge cover. Or what you could end up doing here is actually going to, sorry about this, going to this edit menu here and hitting replace. So now this brings up a wizard that you can use inside the Vault client to take this one part and actually select the replacement. So we're going to also pick the parents. If you wanted to select only certain assemblies that you want to replace in, you can go ahead and do that. But it brings up all the parents, all of the assemblies that this file is a part of, allows you to pick them. So, and then once we have all the parents, we can actually pick the new file that we wanted to use. So in this case, cartridge cover. Then you hit finish. It's going to give you a warning here. Typically, it's because sometimes you can do this replacement. Technically, it doesn't have to be the exact geometry. And like you would inside of Inventor, when you replace a file with another, you can end up breaking some, basically some geometry. Basically the word is escaping me. Essentially, any of the meshes or any of the relationships between parts, if it's not the exact same geometry, you could lose that. So it's gonna go ahead and warn you about that. Basically, since it's the same geometry, you don't have anything to worry about. Everything should mesh up the same. So it's gonna go ahead and do the replacement here. Gonna go ahead and close out of here. And now when we refresh our page here and we go to where used, it no longer brings up that assembly we were talking about. So now that it's no longer being used, I can come in here, delete this not in Vault yet. It's gonna give you some warnings here about previous versions. Again, because this file was used at some point, because this file is part of the history of another file, you'll run into this restriction here. As as an administrator, you'll be able to ignore the restrictions and go through. Just keep in mind that it would actually affect the previous versions. This is, again, more of a cleanup version. So your new assemblies, your assemblies moving forward will now use the correct consolidated parts. So, you know, it's up to you if you want to keep the files in here. Typically, again, this is more of a house cleaning task. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and remove this from our vault unconditionally. And again, if we go to my duplicates dashboard, it goes back down to 3.8, and I would go ahead and continue and do the cleanup on the rest of the geometries as we move forward. So again, this the functionality that duplicate search now brings to Vault Professional in itself is something that I know a lot of our customers have wanted, and it's what we're bringing to them now, and what we want to bring through AVA here to make sure that everybody's aware of it, to do a lot of this cleanup. But overall, if there are any questions or anything that you guys run into when setting this up, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to jump on a call here. With that, are there any questions in the chat here?
There are a few. First one, does it get mirrored parts? Does it detect parts that are mirrored?
So mirrored parts count as a duplicate file. So yeah, if it's mirrored, or if it's in a different orientation than the original one, it'll count it as a duplicate part just because the geometry is the same. So it won't actually ignore it. So you'll be able to find them.
Can you replace any parts if the files are released?
So the whole release portion of it, a lot of the times we actually recommend either moving it out of the release state into a work in progress, which I know is not ideal in a lot of the cases because it'll typically bump up the revision when you're working with that. So if that's the case, what we end up recommending is a temporary account that can be used and created that has edit permissions in released. And that account can be used solely for this purpose, and with limited people having the credentials for it. But typically, you would just need to add this user, give them exceptions, and modify permissions in released to go ahead and clean this up. Most of the time, though, because even though the geometry is changing, even though the geometry is staying the same, the part numbers that are being used, if you do have duplicate files with two different part numbers, you more than likely will want to do a type of change order in order to account for that new part number being used. So again, depending on your situation, the process could change. Go ahead.
Did you see one, Jose?
Yeah, I was going to say that I think one came in saying, can you exclude parts from being counted? Not specific parts, but you can choose folders that you want indexed and folders. So essentially, you can get pretty granular with the folders that you want included. Again, if we go to our setup, you can configure the folders that you want it to look in. Again, if you pick the top level, it'll include all the children. So if there's specific quote unquote library folders that you don't want to include or anything like that, then it'll you would just have to go in and dig deeper. And if I remove a folder, then it'll only look in this specific jet engine model and below.
And then Fred asks, does this work with files from Frame Generator? And how does Vault correct the main assembly afterwards? So Frame Generators, interesting. The way that it manages the files within it. Jose, have you tried?
I have not actually tried it specifically with Frame Generator.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm leaning towards it won't work with FrameGen.
if it's something, Fred, that you're looking to get cleaned up, or is there specific, if there's a specific reason that you're looking to replace the components, or even just make sure that it's not affecting it, definitely something we can jump on a call and
I'm
take a look.
I'm gonna err on the side of it doesn't work with FrameGen simply because of how the files are generated, especially using a skeleton sketch to generate the files. Just the way that it manages everything, I don't think this will work for that.
Is my parts list bomb going to change? Because it leaves the app properties as it is. So when replacing a component, it's going to go ahead and affect the BOM as well, because you're adding a different file to it. So it should change the bill of materials as you move forward.
Yeah, as long as it's not a like hand typed bill of materials. If the bill of materials is like the one in Vault on the item master, then yeah, it'll change.
Yeah, or even in the assembly, the one that's generated there.
Yep, the parts list in the assembly too.
And then does duplicate search only check 3D geometries? I'm assuming this is related to drawings as well as what's going on as far as yeah. So this is specifically for 3D geometries, parts, assemblies, things like that it searches through to find identical
Geometry. Yeah. And then there's a question from the chat too. Scott's asking, we've got like several hundreds of thousands of files in the vault. Is it feasible to run without waiting for it to complete hours? So it will take hours for it to run, but then the dashboard is going to be up. So depending on what your refresh time is, it'll just be continually looking for dupes.
Yeah. So the biggest thing here is, like you mentioned, it's the initial index of it. I haven't seen it take too long. Again, it depends on the amount of files. It looks like you guys do have a lot, but because this is on an automated job processor / automated like list, it's probably something that you would be able to run on a Friday afternoon and let it run over the weekend, just to have it ready on Monday, kind of thing. That way, again, you're not expected to see any
Performance
slowdowns
loss.
or anything like that. Yeah.
But once you have that dashboard up, right, you've got the dashboard up. So
Exactly. Once it's up, it's pretty much incrementals at that point whenever you're checking in new files. Something to keep in mind though is if you remove a folder that has been indexed previously, and then try to add the folder again, it actually has to re-index again. So just keep that in mind when you're setting up your settings for duplicate search.
Yep. Yeah. So okay. Cool. Is the job processor used in the example you showed from within Inventor, or is that local?
So it's local to my machine. So I actually have it running in the background here. So you'll see that I have my job processor running, looking for jobs. In a lot of cases, though, a lot of our customers have a separate machine that's running it, just to avoid using up the resources of a user.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of things the job processor can do for those people who don't currently use job processor. If you want to, say for example, your files are taking a super long time to check in. Sometimes that's because the visualization file that Vault creates on check-in is happening through your Inventor application. And so sometimes it's useful to have that be pushed off to the job processor computer to go ahead and generate those visualization files. Additionally, too, job processors can do things like automatically create PDFs. And then there's a bunch of other automation that we've coded for people to be able to like do things like automatically export step files, PDFs, do DXFs, things along those lines too. So this isn't the only thing the job processor does. There's a ton of functionality
Yeah,
So
exactly. And just to clarify on the whole local um, versus job processor kind of thing, when you're looking at a visualization file and it's not available, sometimes you'll run into that if you're not generating them automatically on check-in. You have an option to update locally or queue update. If I update locally, that's the one that locks up your client and pretty much does it on spot, versus queue update will actually send it to a job processor, which will be checking for a job. So um, if you're generating them or updating them and you see that it's not coming up or it's still not generating, one of the things I would definitely recommend checking is the setting that you're setting it up to. Because a lot of the times if you're queuing the update and there's no job processor running, you'll essentially get a full job queue here of either errored out jobs or pending jobs. Because
just things that haven't started yet. So definitely take a look there too. But job processor is super, super, super useful. Even if the job processor machine, you can have a bunch of things queued for like when you're out of the office and stuff. So
one of the things
yeah.
that it gets used for a lot is PDF generation as well. So, other than the visualization files that you have here, if you're generating PDFs on release or anything like that, typically the job gets sent out to the job processor for it to deal with.
Yep. And if you need any more information about that, I know that that is a big hot topic for a lot of people. Just being able to avoid the manual opening of drawing files and creating PDFs, all that fun stuff. So those things can happen automatically through Vault.
So a question came in: can the user manipulate the report? Where is it stored? So the report itself is generated from the dashboard. So once it's generated, there's a couple things you can do to it. Specifically, export it out to Excel or Word, where a user would be able to manipulate it there. So once you export it here, you basically put it on your desktop, and it's an Excel file at that point. So you can go ahead and remove files as you go. I've already replaced this kind of thing. But the nice thing is, if like we did with my replace of the cover we were working on, once it's removed from Vault or I delete the part, the duplicate actually gets removed from this list. So the dashboard itself gets updated pretty much every time you work on it. And when you work on it, you can actually just generate a new report of the files that you're currently working on. So you'll be able to generate it every time you make changes. But if you want to actually manipulate the data or the names and stuff like that, you can export it to Excel, PDF, or Word.
Anything else, Jose? We'll leave people another 30 minutes or so to ask any questions that they do have.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, other than that, I think it's for the capability that you're getting out of it and the tool that it is. It's pretty simple to set up and use, and you have many ways of actually working on the files that you need to replace or remove. So it's just a question of setting up a time or a plan of attack, essentially, to clean up the vault and make it as efficient as possible and as concise as possible.
I think that looks like it, Jose.
Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah, looks good. Again, anything comes up, any questions, any issues that you're running into with the job processor on your initial scan, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to jump on a call with you guys.
Yep, absolutely. And hopefully this helps you figure out whether or not you have a dupe file problem. Sometimes, oftentimes, right, when people do copy design kind of blindly and just generate a bunch of duplicate files that they don't necessarily need, this can help take care of that. I know that I've looked at some vaults before, and it's sometimes you put a bunch of legacy data in the vault that was managed a little bit differently than it is now, and you're stuck with a lot of things. Hopefully this lets you clean that up. It is a big problem for a lot of our customers. Their vaults are considerably larger in size due to simple things like fasteners or small library, purchase parts that just happened to get named something a little bit different, or it was easier to just get a new copy of it than to find the old one. And this is just a way to clean that up. So hopefully this helps. If you guys have any questions, like Jose said, let us know and we'll go ahead and take care of them for you.
Yeah. And again, this is 2020.2 and 2021. So if you're not on those versions yet, that's definitely something else that we can help with as well. So yeah, let us know.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks again, Jose, for joining us. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us today for AVA. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.